You've probably clicked on this video because you see yourself as being too ambitious for your own good. Your desire to be successful is starting to feel heavy. Like no matter how much you do, it is never enough. Every goal you reach ends up exposing another one, higher and more demanding. Everyone in our society praises ambition as a virtue. But for us truly ambitious individuals, our drive reaches a point where it becomes stressful. Rest feels undeserved and slowing down feels like falling behind. You're moving constantly, yet you never feel like you've arrived. If this felt somewhat relatable, then you're in the right place. I'm not going to sit here and try to motivate or show you how to push harder. You already know how to do that. What I'm here to do is explain how you reach this state and how to use that curse the right way. This isn't a new problem. Long before hustle culture, social media, or career ladders even existed, ancient Greeks were already warning about what happens when ambition goes past a certain threshold. Aristotle, for example, argued that virtue only exists in balance. In Nicomachean Ethics, he describes the idea of the golden mean, the point between excess and deficiency. He mentions that courage sits between fear and recklessness, while confidence sits between insecurity and arrogance. Ambition was no different. A person who lacks it doesn't go anywhere. Too much of it, and the mind suddenly becomes unstable. Sounds familiar? Well, according to Aristotle, excess never helps, even when it comes to positive traits. After a certain threshold, they stop helping and start costing more than they give. Centuries later, the Stoics pushed this idea even further. Seneca mentioned that endless striving doesn't create fulfillment at all. In Letters from a Stoic, he repeatedly returns to the same observation. The more your happiness depends on future outcomes, the less peace you have in the present. The ambitious person isn't happy because their satisfaction is always postponed to a later point, which technically never comes because there is always a bigger goal waiting. However, one thing philosophers couldn't explain was why the mind reacts this way. That part had to wait for neuroscience. From a more recent scientific standpoint, the reason too much ambition feels this way has everything to do with how your brain's reward system actually works. Let me explain. Most people think motivation is driven by pleasure. It is not. It is driven by dopamine, a neurotransmitter linked to anticipation. Dopamine spikes before you achieve something, not after, okay? This is why chasing feels energizing and arriving to the destination often feels underwhelming. So why does this matter? For highly ambitious people, this whole dopamine system becomes dominant. Your brain learns to associate progress and future achievements with reward. The problem is that once a goal is reached, dopamine drops rapidly, and I mean rapidly. Your brain creates a new baseline, and suddenly what once felt significant now feels normal. This is known as hedonic adaptation, the tendency of the brain to return to baseline regardless of success. So what happens is that no matter the result, your brain is never satisfied. The next goal must be bigger and more meaningful to stimulate the brain. And at that point, ambition simply stops feeling like a choice and instead, it becomes a means of survival. See, ambition itself isn't the problem. The problem isn't that you want too much. It is that your self-worth, motivation, and nervous system are all tied to a future outcome. And as I promised in the title of the video, I'm going to show you how to cope with the reality of being too ambitious. And coping here doesn't mean lowering your standards. It simply means changing how ambition is structured in your life. The first shift that should occur is separating progress from identity. When ambition becomes your identity, every slowdown feels personal. When you're resting, you're failing. When you're losing, you're falling behind. The goal isn't to stop caring about achievements. The actual goal is to stop using it as a proof of your value. Ambition should be a tool that you use to your advantage, not something you are. The second shift should be moving from outcome obsession to process loyalty. Now, hear me out. Dopamine doesn't respond well to vague, distant outcomes. It responds to momentum. When your motivation depends entirely on future success, your brain stays under under constant stress. But when you anchor ambition to daily small achievable goals like showing up, executing consistently, etc., motivation becomes more stable. You stop living in anticipation and start building yourself under consistent execution. The third shift is learning to schedule rest on purpose. Not as a reward, not as a recovery from burnout, but as a deliberate counterbalance. Highly ambitious people mainly struggle because they see rest as threatening. By practicing periods where nothing is being optimized, you teach your nervous system that safety doesn't depend on constant progress. And this is what coping means here. It means containing ambition instead of letting it leak into every corner of your life. Because when ambition is controlled, it becomes a very, very powerful tool.